Peace, peace. This is Ashaki Ali, also known as the True Lioness, coming with the video. I apologize. It's taking me so long to get back to the topic at hand about the 5 books that have helped to shape my life. But here is video number 3, book number 3, and that book that I want to discuss today is Assata. And this is the book, the biographical autobiography of the revolutionary mother, whom I call Mother, Assata Shakur. And the reason I chose that book, as far as books that have helped to shape my life, I came from a perspective of where I am currently and my life in general. So I read the book. I was first introduced to the book as a teenager. I had a friend who was a member of the Nation of Gods and Earths, or commonly called 5%ers, and he first gave me the book. And I was a wild child out in the street running wild, and he would always say, you have something else going on underneath the surface and you running from that. And I really just didn't want to feed into it too much, but in all actuality, I knew that he was speaking truth. So let me go back a little bit. Before I was even introduced to the book, and why I know what he said to be true. My first encounter with systemic, just ugly racism, I was about age 6. And I was walking to the store, and I was crossing the street. I had been taught to cross the street or whatever. I looked both ways, didn't see anything coming. And then out of nowhere, here comes a car full of white teenagers. And one of the teenagers stuck his head out of the car, spit on the ground very close to me. I think he really tried to spit on me. And he said, "Get out of the road, nigga." And when he said it, even though I really didn't, at 6 years old, how aware can you be? But nevertheless, when he said it, it was the energy behind what he said that let me know that this person didn't like me. And for what reason, I didn't know. I felt afraid. I went to the store, got what I was going to get, and I went home, and I kind of cried a little bit on the way back home because my feelings were hurt. Still not really processing what he meant by what he said. And so when I got home, my grandmother was sitting on the porch, and she asked me immediately, as soon as she looked at my face, she was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I told her what had happened. And my grandmother kind of shook her head, and she said, "Come here." And I sat on her lap, and she proceeded to tell me that most white people, she didn't say all, she said most white people do not like us. And I said, "Us who?" And she said, "Black people." And I said, "Why?" And she proceeded to kind of give me a breakdown of what racism is and what it was. And actually, she shared a few stories of her childhood. One in particular, how her brother ended up living in Newark, New Jersey. How he ended up that becoming his home. And that's another story for another time that I'll share. But nevertheless, I walked away from that conversation seeing the world very differently. And then I started thinking about my life and certain things and places that we didn't go to, or things we didn't experience, and then it made sense. It kind of made some things concrete as to why certain neighborhoods we didn't go into very often, or why a close friend of my mother's, her name is Opal, why Miss Opal never invited us to her house, because her husband was very racist, and other things. So fast forward, as a youth, I began to, I learned to read very early, and I began to seek out books, which I've shared on I think my first video, and I'd already, by the time I got the book Assata, I'd already read many other books about many other famous or infamous African descendant people. So that book was right in line, but at the time that I was introduced to the book, I'd stepped away from my path of self-discovery and, began to experience the world as a young lady that had, gone through quite a few different things and things that weren't very pleasant. And so at this point, I really wasn't seeking to know who I was, but he saw that in me. So he gifted me the book. I took the book home and sat on the book for about 2 weeks. I didn't even crack open the pages. And then one day I'm like, let me read this book. The book itself was the story of Assata discovering herself. Joanne Chesimard is her real name. Going from Joanne to Assata, from, a young lady, a little girl, with Southern grandparents and these things, and then being in the city, having different experiences out in the world, and then eventually finding herself thrust into the revolution, finding that everything that we've been taught to be a lie, to discovering that our history is much richer than that which has been presented to us in, normal school systems. That, racism is not the teenagers in the car that call me a nigga. Racism is a system to keep our people oppressed. Everywhere from education to healthcare to law to financial, economically, racism is a system that we have no control within. That's why we must establish our own economic systems. That book reignited a flame that I had kind of put to the back burner for a minute, and started me back on the path. Life is a journey, and at different, as I reflect back on my life, all the 36 years of it that I've lived so far, I see different blips within my story where that aspect of my life, as far as revolutionary knowledge of self and finding myself being a leader within my own community, so to speak, that's something that's a very deeply ingrained part of me, and that's something that I will, I fully embrace to this day, even though I take a different, I'm on a different path within it at this time, even as I was a few years ago. I'm always evolving, and that's what we should be doing. So nevertheless, though, I read the book. I really didn't change my actions at that time, though. In retrospect, if I had, fully embraced that part of myself, there's some hardships and things that I experienced that I probably wouldn't have experienced. But at the same time, the area in which I lived, there was no community for me to really gravitate towards. There were no woke people not where I was living, so to speak. And I hate that term, but that's just a easy way for me to explain it. There was no so quote unquote conscious community in the area that I lived. The most awakened individuals were people that were a member of Nation of Gods and Earths, and there were no female members that I'm aware of that lived within my vicinity. Everybody was more concerned with partying and bullshit. Partying bullshit, that's what it was. So I had no outlet to express myself in that regard. So again, it went to the back burner a bit. Fast forward years later, probably 15 years, between 10 to 15 years later, I got the book again. But this time, the atmosphere of the world at large was very different, because with the advent of social media and with me having these friends from far off places, but with the same type of mentality that I have, then I had an outlet. I had a connection and a community in which to involve myself. So I picked the book up again, but I bought my own copy. And in purchasing that copy, it reestablished that aspect of my being. And I'm very grateful for that. the struggles that Assata endured, the torture that she endured at the hands of the U.S. government, and her eventual escape to Cuba, and the mantle that she carries is very precious to me, and I call her mother. She is, and she's still giving us so much, even with the threat of imminent danger at times. She still gives to us, her children of the revolution. And so I hold her in a very high regard. Her birthday is a holiday for me, and her book has helped to shape my life. Not only from the respect of the things that she went through, but also the programs that she helped to establish, because it gave me some ideas on things that I could do to help my own community. I still refer to that book because there's so much in it, and every time I read that book, I find new information to apply today. So I thank Assata from the very bottom of my heart and with my full spirit and intent. Thank her so much for sharing that bit of her life with us and for doing what she did for us. So hopefully next week I will have book number 4, because this is book number 3, that I will share with you how it helped to shape my life and why I selected the book. I hope, again, if you have not read the book Assata, please do so. That book will open your eyes and really make you take a sit back and really look at where you live and really see how things have been whitewashed and how our people have literally had the foot of others placed upon our heads for so freaking long till it's ridiculous. But also that even with the atrocious things that have been done and continue to be done, we continue to live and to procreate and to bring joy and to bring information forward and goods and services, and we continue to shed light even when the world tries to extinguish us. So until next week, you guys take care. I hope you are having a very happy Monday. This is Ashaki Ali signing off. Chronicles of a Lioness. If you have not subscribed, please do so. Share this video if you would like, or share any of my other videos, and comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Peace.